Hello everybody and welcome back to another game review here on the channel. Today I'm joined by Jeremy.
Hello.
And we are going to be discussing a game I received in the mail recently. I backed it on Kickstarter. It's called Majesty of Dragons. It's for 2 players, ages 14 and up. Should take about 15 to 45 minutes to play, and apparently it's moderate complexity.
Yes, we're going to tell you about the mechanics of the game, how to play it, and then we're going to meet you right back here and we're going to give you our final thoughts on it. In Majesty of Dragons, you are playing a dragon master trying to amass the greatest dragon army in the world. There are 5 ways to win the game. The first is domination victory. Every time you kill an enemy dragon, you get 1 Dragon Rage token. Get 5 Dragon Rage tokens to win the game. 2. Majestic victory. Each dragon card has a majesty value. Copper is worth 1 point, silver 2 points, gold 3 points. Sum up a total majesty of at least 20 points to win the game. Nemesis victory. Control 5 Nemesis dragons. Lord of the Orbs. When you hold at least 25 dragon orbs, you win the game. And sudden death. When the dragon's deck runs out, sum up all of your majesty. The player with the most majesty points wins. What would a game about dragons be without plenty of thematic components? We have dragon cards, dragon lord cards, progress cards, Dragon Quest cards, Dragon Orbs, the turn token with Great Dragon on the blue and the red side, Dragon Rage token, 2 cloth bags, Dragon Lord tokens, and 2 help cards to help you track your turn and the different types of dragons. Let's discuss one of the most important components in this game, and that is the dragons themselves. On your standard dragon card, you have the color, which indicates the type of dragon. You have the might, which represents the strength of the dragon necessary for combat. You may or may not have an N, indicating whether or not it's a nemesis dragon. You have the name, which of course gives the name of the dragon. You have the majesty, which is represented by 3 different metal types, and that is copper, silver, and gold for 1, 2, and 3 points respectively. And you have the dragon orb cost. This is what you need to minimally bet in order to win an auction. Discussing dragon types, you have 4 different dragon types. You have the neutral dragon. They don't have any abilities. The majestic dragon. They add +1 to your total majesty in addition to their base majesty value. Primordial dragons. +1 dragon orb at the beginning of each turn if you are the player that controls the most primordial dragons. And chaos dragons. They win ties in combat. We have Dragon Lords. Dragon Lords are either the servants of the dragon or sometimes the dragons themselves reincarnated in human form. The Dragon Lords are powerful characters that will grant you benefits and will open up new game mechanics and combos. Each Dragon Lord has a self-explanatory text. There is no limit to the number of Dragon Lord cards you can control. We have progress cards. Progress cards grant you a permanent or one-use bonus. Like dragons, they have a cost in orbs that you will pay to acquire them. Once you buy a progress card, you immediately get its benefits, and you can keep the card until the end of the game. No limit to the number of progress cards you can control. Dragon Quest cards. They have a condition in order for you to get a reward, and that reward comes in the form of orbs. Once you've completed it, you just play that Dragon Quest card at any time, get your orbs, and grab them from the bag, and you gain those into your pool. You then shuffle the Dragon Quest card back into the Dragon Quest deck. Your dragon orbs are your currency in order for you to buy dragons, as well as progress cards. You want to get as many as possible. It's also a win condition if you get enough of them. Dragon Lord tokens. These are used to track the current cost of recruiting Dragon Lords. Every turn that passes, a Dragon Lord token will be removed from the stack, and that will subsequently lower the cost of recruiting Dragon Lords. When recruiting a Dragon Lord, you take from the 4 Dragon Lords that are in the row and pay the amount indicated by the number of tokens in the stack. There will always be 4 Dragon Lord cards in the row. The only time this is not true is before the first turn, when the players get to recruit 1 each out of the 6 that are laid out at the beginning of the game. Once a Dragon Lord is recruited, the stack is reset back to 5. Dragon Rage tokens. If you have at least 5 Dragon Rage tokens, you win the game. You gain 1 Dragon Rage token for killing a dragon, and every time you attack an opponent with no dragons, you get 3 Dragon Rage tokens. Your turn has 3 phases, and we're going to discuss those each in turn. The phases are as follows. Phase 1, Dragon Control. Phase 2, Combat. Phase 3, Reinforcements. In Phase 1, Dragon Control, you're trying to get the most powerful dragons to join your side of the conflict. And how are you going to do this? Well, it's an auction. You're going to use your dragon orbs as currency to bid against your opponent to try and get the most dragons and the best dragons to join your side of the conflict. Starting with the active player, place dragon orbs onto the dragons in the center of the table at a minimum of the cost represented at the bottom of the card. The next player will then get an opportunity to bid. They can try and outbid, or they can spread their bid around to other dragons. But in the long run, the one who has the most orbs on each dragon will get that dragon. Those who lose their bids will get their orbs back. Something to consider about dragon control in phase 1, you are not allowed to move your bids once they are placed. You are allowed to pass to see what the other player is going to do, and the round ends once both players have passed consecutively. Phase 2 is combat, and in combat, you're trying to achieve domination victory by getting Dragon Rage tokens and wiping out your opponent. The first step of combat is to pay 2 dragon orbs. You return them to the bag. The second step is you create the battlefield, and that's by moving the dragon row out of the way so you have a playing field. The next step is to attack. The attacking player is going to line up their dragons in front of their opponent's dragons. The next step, player 2, the not active player, gets to defend. That means they get to choose which dragons match up against which other dragons. You're going to be comparing might values in order to see which one wins. Lower might value gets defeated. The support rule, if there are dragons left over on either side, those dragons would then be piled on top of one of the other active dragons that is participating in combat. This will add their might value. No dragons get to be left out of combat. Once all dragons are involved in one of the fights, you're going to compare might values of each individual conflict. Defeated dragons are placed in a discard pile that is off the playfield, and rage tokens are going to be allocated based on which dragons were defeated and whether or not there were actually dragons on both sides. Because if you attack an opponent that has no dragons, you get 3 coins automatically. Don't worry though, if you lost some dragons, each one that died gets you a dragon orb. Phase 3 is reinforcement. This is when you can acquire progress cards or recruit dragon lords. To recruit dragon lords, you're just going to pay the number indicated by the number of dragon lord tokens in the stack. To acquire progress cards, you just pay the number indicated on the progress card. Remember, if you trigger some combos, you get to choose the order that they resolve. This is a handy piece of knowledge when you start acquiring Dragon Lords and progress cards that trigger different effects. Play continues in this manner until one of the victory conditions is achieved. Now that you know how to play the game, I'll meet you back up top and give you our final thoughts.
Now that you know how to play, we want to take some time to provide our final thoughts on the game. Like all games, I think it did some things very well, and I think it did some things poorly. I'm going to start with the negatives, so we end on a positive note. I think this game had a lot of potential. I could really see what it was going for. I liked how the lords could play into strategy, the same thing with quests and progress cards. But this game has one fatal flaw that I think it could have ironed out if they had play tested it a little longer. And that's the fact that one of the 5 ways you can win is by destroying enemy dragons and getting rage tokens. When you get 5 of these, you win the game.
That seems to be the most common way to win based on our playtesting.
It's in fact the only way we have won this game. And the problem with this is when you are attacking or defending, if you have more dragons than the other person, you can have them essentially gang up on the dragons. And this essentially
the support
means
mechanic.
You are always going to win these encounters, which means you're always going to get these rage tokens, which means you're going to get one step closer to winning the game and probably wipe out your opponent's dragons. The problem with this is if you're just attacking your opponent directly, you get 3 rage tokens automatically, and each time you're killing them, you get 1, and you only need 5. So basically, as soon as your opponent's wiped out, they're screwed. There is no way to come back.
The first major attack that's performed by a player, which is typically initiated when the player knows that they're going to win it, because the defender gets to choose how the matchups happen, but the attacker has to initiate the attack. So they're going to initiate the attack, know that they're going to win, potentially knock down the other player to 0 dragons, which is how most of our games went, where the player just ended up with 0 dragons, and then you're playing catch up the entire game, and you're not able to get lords, you're not able to get the progress cards, you're not able to spend orbs on anything else besides dragons because you're constantly behind on that. So it's basically you most of the time, unless the other player is super lucky and can pull out getting the nemesis things or something like that, where they could get enough Nemesis or enough Majesty Dragons to win by one of the other win conditions, which are significantly more uncommon, then they're just spending the entire game trying to catch up to the other player with no dragons, and they don't get to really play the other aspects of the game.
And it's not that enjoyable when you're in that sort of situation. The other thing I would have to comment on is that although the rules were very straightforward, they're not written in the most concise manner, and at times they contradict themselves. I'm going to give one example. In this book of rules, it tells you how to set up the game, and then later it says both players start the game with 4 Dragon Quest cards they keep secretly in their hands. And it goes on to explain what those are. It does not mention that in the setup, and then a few pages later, it says, each player draws 7 random Dragon Quest cards, keeps 4 and discards 3, shuffle them back in the deck. They keep them secretly in their hands. Okay, that's not that big a difference in the grand scheme of things, but when you think about it, A, that should have been in the setup section. B, getting to choose which ones you keep allows you to create more of a strategy as to how you're going to play and which dragons you're going to go for. So it's slightly more beneficial than just getting random stuff and hoping things kind of work out for you.
Yeah, so like there's 3 different places where that rule could have been put in, and it should have at least been mentioned in the setup section, just because you kind of have to read towards several pages into the rule book before you get to the resolution of the quest cards. That's just a little bit of like concise rule design for it. It's not a huge deal in the long run because you're reading through the whole rule book anyway, but just how you do it to make it less confusing.
The other thing I'm going to say is this game is not table friendly. There are a lot of cards involved. There are a lot of moving parts, and it really spreads out. You do need a decent sized table to keep everything in place. But
because you need a discard for the dragons, you need the lords lined up in a certain area, you need the quest stacked in a certain area, you need all of the dragons here. They even build it in that you need to clear the dragon board to initiate attacks, which is not typical. Normally you would have a place to attack in the design of the game that doesn't require you to clear the dragon like market area in order to have enough space to attack. I think that was kind of done in an effort to make it table friendly, but it just kind of makes it a mess and it's kind of confusing.
I think it might have been better if the dragon cards were laid out on the side of the playing area along with the progress cards.
Yeah,
that would have kept them out of the way.
Yeah, and we did kind of like move certain components around while we were playing to make them make a little bit more sense to us as people who play a lot of games that take up a lot of space. But there are some good aspects to the game. The components are nice. I like that they came with the little bags. I like that they're the orbs are like actual beads, not just like little like tokens that they could have used.
They're like little googly eyes or those stones you'd always put in your goldfish tanks as a kid.
Yeah, I like the idea of the lords and the progress cards and the quest cards. I think those are all cool aspects. I think they make them a little bit too expensive because you're constantly in the slog to get dragons, and that doesn't leave you a lot of orbs left over to compete in that avenue, plus get lords, plus get progress cards. And it's just, I don't think they mesh very well together in a way of cost. There's also the fact that when the lords get picked, if somebody picks a lord, they all get shuffled back into the deck, which I think is weird. So you can't build a strategy around, if somebody grabs the best lord or like what I deem that they're going to probably grab, I can grab this other one and it gets refilled. They all get shuffled back in and the cost of the lords resets, which I think is just kind of punishing for no reason.
I think it would have been easier if they all had a set cost from the beginning, maybe the same number or varying numbers. It doesn't really matter, but just something to make it easier to remember. Cause it's also just another thing you have to remember. It's like, did I move the tracker down? Do you remember, Jeremy, if I moved the track? It's just, and
some of the lords they definitely could have used different costs because some of the lords are significantly better than others. Like the one that does +2 to all bronze dragons and then the one that does +2 to all neutral dragons. Those are really powerful and they stack a lot. There's a lot of lords that are just better than the other ones, and you could have easily made it this one's 5, this one's 4, this one's 3, this one's 2, this one's 1, based on how good they were. That obviously would have required more play testing to balance all that out. But I think if you play through a handful of games, you kind of get a sense on which are the better lords and which ones should probably be 5 and which one should probably be 1.
I think it also makes for a better gaming experience when these other components, which I feel were made with love, can be utilized more easily. This is a 2-player game, so as soon as someone's down, they're down. It's not like there's a 3rd or a 4th player over here that can kind of help balancing things out, which I think actually might have helped. If this was a 4-player game, I think it could have been better because it wouldn't be so easy for someone to just take the lead from the start and then basically punish the other player.
Yeah, I mean, you could run into the situation if it was like that, then the next player would just knock out the person who got beaten in the first one, which is potentially what would happen. But then they're leaving themselves open potentially to the other players, so there's a little bit more balancing like that. And it's one of those things where I play a lot of Magic the Gathering, and I play a lot of Commander, which is 4 players, and there's a lot of politicking at the table there where you can outright swing at one player and knock them out, but that probably leaves you open for the clapback from the other players. And there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's built into games that go beyond 2 players. And again, using the Magic the Gathering thing is a lot of times from the early on in the game that you're going to lose, and you kind of have to sit there and play out the game that you're probably going to lose, and it feels bad. And I feel like you end up in this situation in this game where, I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose. I just have to play out the motions until I lose. And I don't really like that in a game where there's not really any way of bouncing back. Unless the other player misplays. That's really what you're waiting on. Like, you're waiting for them to let you get the right dragons to win.
It's not very fun when you're in that position. So I do feel like this is a game with a lot of potential that just needed a little bit of tweaking. Outside of that, I think the components are very strong. The card quality is top-notch. The tokens are top-notch. Every component is top-notch. The art is beautiful. Every dragon's different. There's some that look like they could be twins or brothers.
But overall, they are really nice. Everything looks really nice.
And I like that the rule book is actually a book. Thank you for not giving us a pamphlet. We love you. And thank you also for giving us pull tabs to open the cards because they weren't all warped and impossible to get out.
Which is great. So those are our positives. Those are our negatives. If you've played this game since it came out on Kickstarter and you've gotten a chance to get it in your hands physically, let us know down below in the comments what you think on the game. Like the video if you like it, and subscribe so you don't miss any of this board game review content and Kickstarter content going forward, and ring that bell so you know what's up, and we will catch you in the next one.
Bye, guys.
Hi, Tisha Valenza, aka Poison Ivy, and you've just been watching King's Entertainment Reviews. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch.